Hey guys, so a lot of people in the past 5 or 6 years ask me from time to time, what was jail like? What was your experiences like? Um, all sorts of different things from what it looks like, what my day to day activities were. Was I scared? Uh, did I get into any kind of trouble? Was there trouble around? Different common things we were curious about, given the things we see in the media about what jail or prison looks like. Fortunately, after my short stint in county jail of again 5 days, I I wrote up a paper kind of documenting my experience. I did this in part because at the time I was a college student. I was going to school majoring in anthropology, and I was taking an ethnography class. And an ethnography is essentially just a study, an anthropological study. If I were to go and study the mole people in New York City, and I'd take notes, field notes of my experience there, and I document different interviews I would take. I would document the surroundings, and that'd be my ethnography of what it looks like among the mole people in the subways and tunnels and sewers of New York City. Similarly, if I went to Tokyo and wanted to see what is it like for a typical Japanese businessman in modern day Tokyo, I could do that. I could go to a rural town in Indiana and do an ethnography there as well. So um, it's an anthropological study documenting an experience essentially, and what one person's takeaway of a culture would be. So I did this while in jail. I started taking some notes of my experience there, and then once I was released out on bail, I proceeded to draft up a whole document, which I later turned in to my professor for my ethnography class. Again, I was still enrolled in school, and finals were due. So I'm going to read for you this ethnography of a jail to give you some insight into what it looks like in a jail, in a county jail, and what my experience was. I hope this is interesting, illuminating, and maybe profound, maybe not. But anyhow, ethnography of a jail, written by 21-year-old me, nearly 8 years ago, documenting my experience in a jail. So I start off with a quote: "Whoever strikes a man a mortal blow must be put to death. He, however, who did not hunt a man down, but caused his death by an act of God, may flee to a place which I will set apart for this purpose." That's Exodus 21, lines 12 and 13. Again, I told you while I was in jail, a man suggested I start reading the Bible. I did so, and this line in Exodus really struck me because of the nature of my circumstance, given the fact that I had just witnessed death and had played a role in that death. I was trying to make sense of it, and this line, um, delineating between murder and killing, intention with and non-intention. That was really powerful for me. And honestly, in society, you don't see that delineation marked out very much. People don't really talk about that all that much. Um, Murder isn't a common conversation for good reason, but definitely it's comforting to know that someone somewhere thought about this stuff, and it was there in the good book. So, documenting my experience, I finally arrive in my own cell. It's not a cell in the strict sense of the word. There are no bars. It's not a cage, but rather a horrendous version of a dorm room. Upon entering my room, I notice a toilet and sink to the right, with the mirror above on the wall. A bench-like platform is built into the far wall with a thin, hard foam pad on it. There's some bookshelves and a desk built into the right wall, past where the toilet and sink are. I actually don't recall that. I don't remember there being bookshelves, so that's interesting. Thankfully, windows are built into the far wall above my bed, and there's even a view of some sky and some beautifully colored trees. Never before have I been so appreciative of windows in my life. Uh, that really gives some insight into my state of mind, obviously. Um, being put into a place that's no bigger than a large bathroom or a smaller kitchen, um, and all there is a small little window looking out to some sky and some trees, and given the kind of depravity and the devastation I had been feeling in the past 12 hours, um, my God, a view of some sky and a view of some nature was food for my soul. Before entering my own room, I had been sitting for about 10 hours in what was a holding room with perhaps anywhere between 6 to 8 other men. There were about 20 chairs in this rather large area, with a toilet and sink around a corner so you were somewhat out of sight from the others when going to the bathroom. In this room, there was a large TV, and all chairs and all people sat facing this TV. As far as holding cells go, from everything I'd learned through the media about them, this wasn't too shabby. The problem with the area was sleeping. The hard floor, which reminded me of a cement Costco floor for my Costco shoppers out there, that was the best option, for one could lay out in search of rest. At the back wall of this room was a telephone, and it was at our disposal. Unfortunately, when I tried to use it, I found that whomever I was trying to contact, I put whomever, I don't know if that was the correct use of whomever, but anyhow, that's what I wrote. I found that whomever I was trying to contact first had to set up an account with the county jail in order to pay for the cost of the call. So I finally managed to get a hold of my parents, and the rush of nerves and embarrassment is overcome by my duty to tell them the truth. I remember this. This is one of the most frightening moments of my life, having to call my parents and let them know what had happened. It was scary. So they're devastating. I tell them, and they're devastated, but they realize the gravity of the situation, and they vow they will work to get me out and to stay strong. I hang up after a little while, left again to ponder my own thoughts. One of the first lessons in jail that I learned was this: I and all the other prisoners were in the dark. There's a lack of information and a lack of access to information, and that can be overwhelming. And the only way to deal with it is to just focus on the moment, not let worry or anticipation get the best of you. However, as for nostalgia and regret, well, some things I suppose I'm just defenseless against. While in the holding room, a guard walks in and calls out 3 last names. Mine is one of them. Each of us had visitors, and I'm in shock, but I'm grateful for the surprise. I sit and wait for a little while with the other 2 men, and we're led through a couple hallways, and I'm directed into a room. My cousin, who is an attorney, is sitting at a table. I'm speechless, so happy to see a family member, yet so confused as to how to interact with him in this most foreign of settings. He tells me that he and my parents drove down to the jail. It's about a 2-hour drive, and however, only people with law licenses could visit me at that time. So he told me they're working with another attorney and contacting family members to work to get me out of there. The only problem is I will not be charged with anything, nor will any bail be set until after the weekend, and it's only Friday afternoon. I'm hopeful things will work out. Turning the page, but I have no idea how long they might take. It's mid-afternoon, and I've just entered my room in section 3B, room 2. I'm holding on to a collection of bed sheets that I'd been given just before so that I may dress my bare bed. I was given these sheets just after I was summoned out of the holding room and into a room with a guard who ordered me to strip and handed me my prison scrubs to wear. Before I can put any sheets on my bed, I hear two loud, young-sounding male voices hollering out, asking if someone new just arrived in room 2. "Hey, two, you just get in? What are you in for? Who are you?" I recall one voice asked if I was with Occupy. So if you'll recall, it's fall of 2011 to November 2011, Occupy movement, Occupy Wall Street, Occupy everything was becoming more and more popular. And I had, in fact, participated in Occupy in my college town. And I recall thinking when that inmate asked me that, I recall thinking, I wish I had been in there in jail for, marching due to Occupy or whatever. I wish it was in that constraint. So I must explain, getting back to the text, I must explain the mode of communication in this hall I was in. I was in room 2 on the bottom floor of 2 hallways, each with 12 rooms in it, and 6 on each side of the hall, and each room was staggered so you are not directly facing another room and another human. The doors have small rectangular windows, and so you can see into the opposing room a little, but view of the rest of your hallway is very limited. Communication between prisoners is via yelling through the walls, and I learned throughout my first day that the closer you are to the door, the louder you can project your voice. So with the 2 or 3 fellow inmates who have hollered questions at me, I respond with my own shouts, briefly describing what I was in for and giving them my name. Each gave me their advice and their opinion of what my fate may be, and this is another lesson I learned early on in jail. Everyone has an opinion and a claim to having knowledge about one thing or the other, and I found to take each opinion with a grain of salt. For each little, quote, truth that I was given, it was a perfect example of how partial truths are. And the best advice I found was to keep my own wits about me, to think for myself, and not let others sway me one way or the other. After all the ruckus of my arrival settled, I was left to my own in the quiet room of what I estimated to have. It was an area of perhaps 50 or 60 feet. My first impression was that I liked my room. It was clean and cozy, and those 2 small windows above my bed that provided the view were most welcomed. I recall laying down in my bed after I put sheets on it, but could not rest on such a hard, uncomfortable mattress. So I sit up and immediately begin taking notes on a packet I was given. The Inmate Information Manual, Rules and Regulations. I laughed to myself at this, thinking how, in spite of all this crazy confusion, I end up sitting here creating an ethnography. With these notes I create, I imagine how in the future I hope to give a speech to my ethnography class on this experience and how easy it would be to relay this experience as a story to all in attendance and how beneficial it could be to all who listen. After I jot down my first few notes of first impressions, I get down on the floor and begin to do push-ups and core exercises, and I can hear while I'm exercising 2 men argue respectfully over who is right about felony charges and the sentences they carry. Again, everyone has an opinion, and usually everyone is wrong. After I've tired myself out, I sit back down on my bed, and since I can finally lay down on something other than a chair or a hard floor, like in the holding room, I decide to try to nap, and set out to by reading my handbook, which obviously lulls me to sleep. I'm roused out of sleep hours later to the sound of one guard saying, "Dinner, gentlemen." I come to the door, and as he opens it, I finally am able to leave my room that I'm imprisoned in. But only for a moment, as I take the tray of food offered to me, and quickly, and with a thank you, head back into my room. The food, though undoubtedly crappy, actually tastes decent, and I enjoy it. I think to myself how interesting it is to just eat without a TV on, without any computer screen open, without music playing. There's no distraction, not one external stimulation to trigger any response from. I'm left to my own thoughts, and the sound of my own chewing is all I hear. It is peaceful, and I am thankful for it. For too long have most of my meals been accompanied by far too many electronic stimulants. I notice that the entire hallway is quiet, not one prisoner is making a sound. While eating, we're all doing the same exact thing at the same exact time. After I finish, a few minutes later, I begin to hear some flushing of a couple toilets. And a couple minutes later, the guard returns to collect our trays. After this, I'm left again to my own devices, and I hear a few more toilets being flushed. It's quite funny to me how all of us are in the same rhythm of life. After my meal, I feel full and satisfied, and I find myself at ease. It is dark out at this time of night, perhaps around 7, though I had no idea of any exact time. My light switch is off in my room. However, the jail keeps its lights on all day and all night. It's not terribly bright. However, as I grow more and more tired and the night grows darker and darker, this light seems to shine with a luminosity that is most unwelcome. There's daytime lights, brighter, nighttime lights, dimmer, but even those dim nighttime lights were nuisances. The next morning, I awake to the guard stating, "Breakfast, gentlemen." I spring out of bed and stand at the ready near my door. My door is unlocked by the guard, opened, and I accept the tray that is handed to me. I ask the guard for the time and, impersonally, almost reluctantly and detached, he states it is close to 6 in the morning as he shuts the door in my face. I eat, and in the quiet of the room and of the entire hall, a peaceful calm drapes over me. But it is melded with the ubiquitous anxiety of not knowing when or how I might get out of my present situation. It is a fear that I knew I could not face at that time. It's a question that I knew I could not answer, not yet. In this omnipresent, paradoxical state, I drift back into quiet, comfortable sleep in my bright, uncomfortable room. It's quite a surreal experience to be asleep, dreaming up a fantasy, actively living in an alternate universe, only to wake up to find that less than 3 inches from your face is a white brick wall, that you're laying on a bed that is not your own, and that you, no matter how carefree and fun your dream was nonetheless a most fickle thing, and the realization that this is your reality stings you to the core in a blunt and indifferent manner. I'm awake again, this time for the lunch call. I rise and, judging the angle of the sun, determine it must be around noon. I asked the guard who fed us what the time was, but she wouldn't say. After resting a little longer and exercising some, I learned from another inmate in the room next to mine that it is 3 o'clock. He knows this because he was just returning from day room. Day room is a 2-hour span of time in which 6 to 8 inmates are let out of the rooms and given freedom to spend time out in a large lounge type of area with tables, chairs, a clock, and a TV. This time is also given so that we may shower, shave if needed, and depending on the week, enter the library room. The library, which is only open every other Saturday. So this is the most freedom we have. I'm told that for 1 hour each week, we're allowed to go to an enclosed area outside. However, I never had the opportunity while there. I'm called out for my time in day room. I'm socializing and watching TV. The Duck game is on. The Oregon Ducks, and they're losing to USC. I'm quite disappointed. I wonder if it's due in any part to the fact that I'm unable to wear my lucky Oregon t-shirt. While socializing, I find out the library room is open and how I should take advantage of it and pick up some reading material. As I consider this and continue watching TV, I begin chatting with a pacing man named Hugo. I'm incredibly thankful that he was one of the men out there with me that night. Hugo was a very inspiring figure for me while in jail. A man in his 30s with intelligent ideas and a devotion to God. He encouraged me during our time talking in day room to pick up a Bible, assuring me it will help me to get through this difficult time. I take heed of his advice and pick up a small copy of the New Testament, as well as a book full of several short thrillers. I have never read any Bible much, but my father is pretty religious and Catholic. My mother is not so religious and Jewish, and thus, raised with differing views, I've always had an open mind spiritually, but I never delved into any holy scripture. As day room hours came to an end, I, with my new books, head back into my room for the night. I lay down awkwardly in my bed to find a comfortable position, and I begin reading the newfound holy book. The inspirational stories about Jesus, his reassuring words about love, forgiveness, and righteousness make me feel an ease, a warmth, and a sentiment that I have not felt in some time. After a night or two of reading the Bible in gradations, my spirituality blossomed and grew stronger within me. This spirituality has sustained me since then, and I've been raised in school to learn about science and evolution. Yet this newfound faith need not evidence, fact, or any kind of partial truth that science so frequently heralds. It only requires a childlike surrender to trust, to believe, to have faith. This is not to say that I'm some born-again Christian, nor do I think I know anything more than I did before picking up a Bible. The only thing I do know is that I know nothing. I'm an ignorant, bewildered creature on this planet, humbled by tragedy, and accepting of this spiritual faith that has been given to me, after so much has been taken away from so many. While laying in bed that night, in the not-so-dim light of my room, replaying the collision over and over and over again in my head, it feels just like an act of God, as if neither party had much control over what had occurred. I'm reminded of the film Crash. At the beginning of the movie, when those words are spoken, it's the sense of touch in any real city that you walk, You brush past people. People bump into you. In LA, nobody touches you. We're always behind this metal and glass. I think we miss that touch so much that we crash into each other just so we can feel something. In my mind at the time, I didn't know the phrase word for word, but just kept thinking, in my life, and especially on campus, we walk past each other, we brush past one another, but there's no connection. Nobody feels, nobody truly lives in the moment. Until finally, somehow, for some reason, we just crash into each other. I don't know why what happened. I just kept thinking that now my path in life is severely altered. And I must not consider so much the, quote, why, but rather, what am I going to do about it? It's Saturday night and I have difficulty sleeping, as I did pretty much every night, and I had no idea how much my world was going to be rocked the very next day. Here's another quote. She told me, baby, when you race today, just take along my love with you. And if you knew how much I loved you, baby, nothing could go wrong with you. Beach Boys, Don't Worry, Baby. Why would I include that in there? That song, I don't know if it was in my mind while in jail or once I got bailed out, but it really, really affected me, given the fact that it's talking about, baby, when you race today, just take along my love with you. And my victim, Craig, he's from Scotland and was an Olympic level skier. I don't know if he participated in the Olympics, but he was up there and was at my university in America going to school. Like I said, I was 21 at the time. He was 24 when he passed away, so he was a little bit older. But given the fact that I knew that detail about him, that he was, a competitor, he was a racer, and I'm just imagining when, the Beach Boys are singing that, it's as if, Craig's mother or Craig's lover or Craig's, God, or angel, it would be saying, when you go out there, just take along my love with you. And if you knew how much I loved you, baby, nothing could go wrong with you. It's still, I don't know if you can sense it through the video, but that still gets to me. Still creates emotion for me. I awake again for breakfast. I fall back asleep after the meal, and not more than 2 hours later, I'm startled into consciousness by my door being unlocked. It's my time for day room. I head out into the lounge area. It's around 8 in the morning. I sit at a table and watch TV. I'm next to an older man in his 50s, and he's reading the paper. I like this man. He's in for bank robbery, but no matter how bad anyone's offense was in that jail, I was able to find some good in most all of the people there. I see that in the paper, in an article along the side column, is a story about my accident. And I continue to watch TV, trying not to think about me or my incident. And he turns around to me and asks, "Are you Mean Joseph Compton?" So he gives me a little nickname, Mean Joseph Compton. I let out a little laugh and respond in the affirmative. He tells me, "I've got bad news." I get worried and prepare myself. "Yeah?" I ask. He gives it to me straight and direct. "That kid you hit died." I feel my jaw drop. My heart plummets. I'm stunned, motionless, frozen in time. He says, "I'm sorry, man." And I believe he meant it. Other inmates were around the table at the time too. And given my young age in comparison to the rest of the people in there, the uniqueness of my case, and their general impressions of me, they could tell I'm not some criminal. They could tell I'm not some troublemaker. They could tell I don't really belong in this place. I could feel them consoling me in a distant, peculiar way, the only way fellow inmates can when knowing a person for just a couple days. Some expressed sympathy for my situation. Others started pointing fingers, asking what on earth the victim was doing out at such a late time of night anyway. Others said nothing. I didn't know what to do, what to say, or even how to feel. I tried to just keep a hold of myself. In my confusion, in trying to act stoic, in trying to not show much vulnerability to my new friends, I put on as much of a happy-go-lucky face as I could muster and said, as I got up and walked around, "Well, I may as well get used to this place, huh?" The world as I knew it was gone forever, and my new life had just begun. The following days dragged on like all the others, and each night I was able to speak to my family via the telephone. They always assured me that if and when my bail was posted, for none of us could really be certain of anything at that time, they would pay it and I would be out of there. On Monday morning, I met with my attorney, who was a family friend, and he briefed me on how my arraignment would go the next day. He told me my charges would be read to me and later a bail would be posted. He let me know I wouldn't have to do anything. He would speak on my behalf, for usually when read your charges, you're to plead one way or the other. He assured me I wouldn't have to do that. Why? Well, let's see why. For my case is a bit more complex, okay? He told me my parents were with him. They were waiting outside the jail. He reminded me to remain strong, keep my head up, and we all would get through this dark time. The next day came. I was arraigned, charges read. A couple hours later, my bail was posted. And while sitting in my room, just after we had had our lunch, my door was unlocked one last time, and I was told by a guard, "Compton, follow me." I say my goodbyes, yelling through the hallway to those individuals who inspired me the most, and went on my way. Sometime later, I was reunited back with my parents, and in a process that lasted a couple hours, was released on bail from the county jail. This whole process is far from over. Mind you, just a parentheses here. Mind you, I'm writing this while out on bail, right? So this is very soon after I had just been released from county jail. Okay. This whole process is far from over, but already I feel I've grown so much, spiritually and mentally. I was in jail for 5 days, which felt like 5 months, and I felt I had aged for 5 years. But this is not such a bad thing. Though it is true I feel I know nothing, I'm still mixed up about how I feel. Sometimes I'll feel good, I'll feel happy, only to feel bad that I'm feeling good. Other times I feel miserable, and yet I manage to produce out of this sentiment a feeling of gratitude. Before this event, I had the idea that life is fragile, but I arrogantly still felt invincible. That life is a miracle, but I still wasted my time. That each moment should be embraced, but I always was reminiscing or looking ahead. I could talk about priorities, about taking things day by day, about putting others ahead of myself, but I never walked the walk. It's true, I am more spiritual now, though I still struggle sometimes with the idea of a God or many gods, or the universe cycling everything through, be it fate, God, or just my own consciousness. I do feel that whenever I'm on this planet, wherever I am on this planet, it's exactly where I'm supposed to be. There's a purpose to this tragedy which has occurred, despite its accidental nature. It was a moment in time, and neither I nor the victim had any foresight that our paths would collide as they did. A moment in time, like a small pebble falling into a body of water, creates ripples in all directions. And lo, after a certain distance and certain amount of time, those ripples appear to be no more. Who can say when and where they ever end? I posit that they go on forever, subtly, even invisibly, but they go on. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. A moment in time, a tragedy, a lesson, a transformation, and a renewal. And so on and so forth, and so be it. Amen. Well, I was trying to make sense of my world, and went for it, laid it all out there. The monotonous descriptions of a jail cell and the inspired remarks of a 21-year-old sobering up. So yeah, there is my ethnography of a jail. I love it. I love that I still have it, and I'd love to hear what you guys think of it. Shoot me a comment. Give me your questions, your comments, your concerns. I love talking about it. I really do. I get a lot out of it, and it's a good reminder of where the heck I've been and what the heck I was thinking about and what I wanted to be focused on. So close to that tragedy. So it's good. It's a good reminder. Good to keep in mind and consider. Like, share, comment. Hope to connect with y'all in the future. And yeah, God bless. Take care.